Impossible to cultivate, your dirt would be in somebody else's farm or a county away. All the dirt was either piled up close by, or else on down into Texas or Colorado, or somewhere else where it blew to.
The first dust storms of the Dust Bowl were recorded in 1931. 5 states were affected by the Dust Bowl. Kansas was one of those states, and western Kansas in particular was severely drowned by the dust. Farmers on the prairie lands were particularly affected. As the Great Depression ruined the rest of the country, farmers in Kansas had enjoyed good times until the drought. The rain stopped, and the drought brought hard topsoil, which the plow could not break. The drier the ground became, the finer the dust on top of the ground. The plants that did bore through the ground were killed by the sun, the blowing dust, or the static electricity produced by the dust storms. As the time for harvest approached, the farmers were sad because of the lack of crops. The lack of water was not the only fight the farmers had to face. As the buzzing sound approached, the farmers' worst fears came alive, the most destructive insect, the grasshopper. Like a plague, grasshoppers flew in swarms, even blocking the sun. They ate everything in their path, including the good crops that could have been harvested. Some farmers mixed vats of poison and spread it over their land to get rid of the infestation of grasshoppers. Some farmers tried to dig deeper wells to get to more water. Their only hope was getting water to keep their crops alive. Some farmers even tried to dig deeper wells every couple of years, but the water just did not appear. Another water-saving project was building dams to conserve the water that did fall, as little as it was. Farmers built small dams, and government workers built larger dams as part of the Work Progress Administration begun by President Roosevelt.
That would make little dams that would hold that water and conserve it.
Farmers also helped build roads as part of the Work Progress Administration. With no wheat to harvest, the work on the roads helped them in a couple of ways. The horses needed to stay active, and the farmers themselves could look ahead to when there would be wheat to harvest. The struggle of the farmers caused many of them to leave Kansas. Those who lost hope of rain coming decided to move westward. They packed their families and few belongings and left. They left their homesteads, their sweat, and their hope in their rear view. Dust would be the symbol of what they left. Moving west gave many families new hope of a brighter future. According to some estimates, nearly 73,000 people left Kansas during the 10 years of the Dust Bowl. The other farmers who had kept hope for rain stayed and kept planting. They hoped to get at least one good harvest which would keep their hope alive for a better future. People were not the only ones affected by the dust. The animals were subject to the same punishment brought by nature. They also had difficulty breathing and died from dust pneumonia like humans. With no crops growing, farmers could not feed their cattle or livestock. Much of the livestock died from starvation. The only thing on the menu for cattle at the time was Russian thistle and prickly pears.
Dust Bowl stroke, the government come out and killed his cattle for him because they had no feed for them.
Yeah.
There was no hay to be brought in to feed for them.
Uh-huh.
So they had to kill the cattle, and he didn't. They paid him very little for them.
Oh, they paid him, and then they
didn't pay him for what they were worth because he gave just a little bit. The government gave him just a little bit because they were doing everybody that way.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, some farmers gathered their cattle and sent them westward to greener land. They sold some of the stock and sent others to pasture. Farmers in the plains were affected in a big way by the Dust Bowl. Many had to leave, but those who stayed struggled until the rain came and the drought was over. They made difficult choices about leaving their lives behind to start new or staying and facing the challenges the Dust Bowl brought.